So we do have some positive news, potential positive news coming out of Russia or coming out of Ukraine. Now, again, every caveat in the world, massive grain of salt, because what people say versus what they do is different, especially when you're talking about war. You got propaganda everywhere. That's obvious at this late date. But now, having said that, let's take a look at what the breakthrough is. So the AP says, Russia's military announced Tuesday it will, quote, fundamentally scale back operations near Ukraine's capital and a northern city, as talks brought the outlines of a possible deal to end the grinding war into view. Deputy Defense Minister Alexander Fomin said the move was meant to increase trust in the talks after several rounds of negotiations failed to halt what has devolved into a bloody campaign of attrition. The announcement was met with skepticism from the U.S. and others. While Russia portrayed it as a goodwill gesture, it comes as the Kremlin troops have become bogged down in the face of stiff Ukrainian resistance that has thwarted President Vladimir Putin's hopes for a quick military victory. Late last week, and again on Tuesday, Russia seemed to roll back its war aims, saying its, quote, main goal now is gaining control of the Donbas region in eastern Ukraine. U.S. Secretary of State Anthony Blinken said he had not seen anything indicating talks were progressing in a constructive way, and he suggested Russian indications of a pullback could be an attempt by Moscow to deceive people and deflect attention. So, all right, let's go through this. To the idea that there's no evidence of the talks progressing in a positive way, that is definitely not true, because we have two huge concessions, or even arguably three huge concessions from Zelensky. They're now official. They're public. He even went to Russian media to let everybody know these are the concessions that we're making. And beyond that, negotiations are happening in Turkey right now, and Erdogan is using the government office or government building or room that is known for like very high level government work. So, and there were a couple articles written about that, how they never break out this room. They never use this room unless you really have some important stuff going on. So there does appear to be some positive movement. Now, where that ultimately will end up, I don't know, and that's just speculation on my part. So let's go through the potential reasons why Putin might be doing this. The first thing that you can bring up is it might not even be true. It might be like, remember when they sort of fake withdrew from the border and attacked the U.S., you said the invasion was going to be Wednesday, and we're not doing it on Wednesday. We proved that you were liars immediately. And he was like, we're drawing down now from the border. And then within the week, he invaded. So it could be a situation like that. He's just saying it, but he's not going to do it. That's one possibility. Another possibility is those supply lines in the north have to come through Belarus. Maybe there's an issue, a problem with those supply lines where they don't feel like they can continue to use those supply lines. They're not effective supply lines. It's costing more than it's worth. There's not enough movement in the right direction. That's another possibility. Another possibility is he's just losing. Like, he's losing too much in that area, and so he's like, we're not going to take Kyiv. We're not going to take, there's one other city as well in the north that they're allegedly moving back from, and he feels like he's portraying it as, I am choosing of my own volition to withdraw, when the reality is his ass was beat back. There's all these different possibilities as to why this is happening. Another potential thing is maybe it is true that he's doing it, and the reason he's doing it is because now there were enough concessions from Zelensky where he feels like, I'll take that minor win and get out of here. Now, I think originally, based on the way the invasion went, it looks to me like Putin genuinely wanted to take the entire country, which is why he invaded the entire country. He didn't just go into the eastern Donbas region. He invaded near the capital too, which is west of the river. So it looked to me like he wanted the whole thing. But it is possible that now he realizes this is going on way longer than he thought. He thought he'd waltz in and take it and be welcomed as a liberator, just like the U.S. thought in Iraq. And he's like, okay, well now I'll take my small win and get out of here. So what did Zelensky say? Well, we covered this the other day. Zelensky, a number of major concessions. So the first one, which he even sort of gave before the invasion, was, all right, we'll be a neutral country. Before the invasion, he said, look, us joining NATO is a dream. Basically, they don't want us, so we're not going to be part of them. He said that before the invasion, and Putin still invaded. And then he also said recently, no, for real, we're not going to be part of NATO. And then he just again comes out and says, we will be a neutral country. We will not align with the West. So, like, hey, I'm letting you in on what you say is your most major point. But now he sweetened the pot a little bit. And his sweetening of the pot was, let's have a conversation about the areas that Russia currently has control over. So what are the areas that Russia has control over? Well, they've had control of Crimea since 2014. So that's one area where he's like, maybe we negotiate, maybe I let go of Crimea. I don't know the specifics of what they're talking about in the negotiation. Are they saying Crimea's got to be its own independent thing and the Donbass region has to be its own independent thing, or two independent republics, like they say? I don't know, but he now appears to be open, Zelensky appears to be open to saying either the eastern portion of Ukraine, the separatist regions, either they can be independent states or Russia, you can have them. Same thing with Crimea. So if he's giving away like the eastern portion of Ukraine and Crimea, and he's saying we're going to be a neutral state, I mean, those are, on paper, those are some of the biggest things that Vladimir Putin has asked for. The biggest things. So are you going to take that win and run based on how the war's going, Vlad, or are you not? Now, again, I think it's complicated because I think it's taken longer than Vladimir Putin thought, but I also think he wants all of Ukraine, or he wanted all of Ukraine. Now, that ship maybe has sailed because there's a fierce resistance going on, but I told you guys from the beginning after I learned about it that there's a tremendous amount of natural gas, not just off the coast of Crimea, but in eastern Ukraine and in western Ukraine. And so I think part of Vladimir Putin's ambitions here are, well, I'm a petrostate. I want that natural gas. And also just Russian imperial ambitions. And he follows a bunch of, ultra-nationalist Russian philosophers who talk about the Russian Empire in glowing terms and talk about how really that they're part of us. Like Ukraine is not its own separate thing. He thinks it's a totally fake state. And so, but either way, these are good signs. These are good signs. Now, again, will anything come of it? Is it actually happening that they're withdrawing? I can't answer those questions yet. I can't. But I don't like the U.S.'s posture here, where they're sort of aggressively being like, no, this isn't real, and he doesn't mean it. And the other thing I'm afraid of is if some sort of deal is reached between Zelensky and Putin, is the West going to just throw a wrench into it and say, like, no, we're not in favor of that. We don't agree with that. If that were to happen, I would be furious. Because if they reach the deal and they're the ones who are fighting, I mean, for the U.S. to veto it and say, no, now you got to keep fighting and keep losing, people who, Ukrainian civilians, and keep losing Ukrainian soldiers and keep creating tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions more refugees because we don't like the terms of the deal, that would piss me off. But at least as of now, the reporting is potentially you have some movement in the right direction. But I was even questioning whether or not to cover this story because it could all be bullshit. We don't know. And you're not going to hear that in a lot of other places, but you'll hear it here that, my degree of confidence when talking about anything on the ground in the context of a war is not very high, because in the war, it's, like I said, you got propaganda coming from 1,000 different directions. Now, at the same time, I should mention, there's a bunch of other questionable things going on. So there was some firing of weapons into Russia from the Ukrainian side. Oh boy. And so you always worry, like, if indeed this stuff about we're getting somewhere with the peace negotiations is real, well, something like that all of a sudden, swing the pendulum and make everybody less in favor of peace again. I don't know. But again, it's hard to tell what's real and what's not on the ground during the war. But at the same time, you have nominal de-escalation. There's also a bunch of different stories of escalation. So we shall see. But let's hope it's real. Let's hope they're working on some sort of peace deal. And let's hope that the nature of any peace deal will actually lead to peace and won't effectively be appeasement where, he's really not satisfied and he's going to keep going anyway. Because there are historical examples of both. You could point to instances where a peace was made and a peace held. And you can point to examples of a peace was made and then the peace was immediately breached because somebody was unappeasable. But there you have it. We'll see what happens moving forward. If you want to see me and Crystal Ball interview legends like Noam Chomsky, Cornel West, and more, subscribe to Crystal Kyle and Friends on Substack. $5 a month gets you the video version a day early. Remember, we take 0 ad dollars for this podcast. Or you can sign up on Substack for free and get the audio version a day later. Link in the video description box below.